forward to the American people. The recent increase in oil and gas prices is temporary, and this operation will result in lower gas prices in the long term. Americans will see oil and gas prices drop rapidly, potentially even lower than they were prior to the start of the operation.
She may be reading it, but I don't know how she can believe that. The White House is continuing to say something that makes no sense. Politically, it makes sense, sure, because it's a false promise. But how? How do gas prices just suddenly go back down as if we controlled the world market? All right? The president is going back up on his affordability tour in Kentucky and in Ohio, and that is much better for the American people and their political reality than just dealing with what's happening in Iran because of America's decision to introduce hostilities that we have not seen in a long time. So, what are the economic realities and how are they cross-sectioned with politics? Trump's former White House communications director, Anthony Scaramucci, conservative radio host, Mark Davis. Good to see you, Brother Davis. Good to see you, Brother Scaramucci. Anthony, I come to you on a regular basis for mentoring and understanding about what I'm missing. What am I missing here? What gives the administration the ability to say, yeah, we can bring the prices right back down, bring them right back down, maybe lower than ever?
Well, I mean, listen, you're going to probably be surprised by what I'm saying because I'm generally a critic of President Trump. But if they solve this, if they de-escalate, and I think what your last guest doesn't really understand is the president and the administration is getting a lot of pressure on them from the Gulf countries, you know, and we have a lot of investments over there and we're pretty clued into it. And so, you know, is this 3 to 5 more days of bombardment? Possibly. When that ends, assuming they can get the mines out of the Strait of Hormuz, you could be 3, 4, 5 weeks away from seeing those gas prices come down, you know. And so, honestly, they say a lot of stuff from the White House, the Tomahawk missile thing into the schoolyard, you know, that was a big lie. But I think this is actually somewhat legitimate if they end the crisis by stopping the bombardment.
All right, but one quick follow, then I want to bring Mark in here on the politics of this. I'm not saying that gas prices don't go back down if the Strait of Hormuz opens up. Obviously, they would go back down. But this suggestion that they would be lower than they were before, on what theory, Anthony?
Well, on the well, listen, what she's predicting is that there'll be more regional stability. And listen, if there was some type of secularization of Iran, I'm not predicting that, but I'm just giving you her point of view. If there's some type of secularization of Iran, the way they've got Venezuela on side, then she is right. The prices would come down. The president would ultimately lift the sanctions on Iran and allow that oil to trade back on the global market. So again, there's a lot of ifs there, but I'm just building, you know, I think we have to be fair.
Right.
We're in the middle of this, Chris. I heard your last guest. Some of it I agreed with, some of it I disagreed with. We're in the middle of it. I'm an American. I'm pro-Israel. I want Israel to survive. They have in their constitution that they want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. So that's a war declaration for 47 years. And so we got to get through this to the other side.
But that's kind of the point, Anthony.
What's that?
Right. But that's the kind of point. That's my point, though. That's my point. And that's the part I don't get. Mark, let me bring you in this, and maybe two of your heads can help force something that I don't see into mine.
Adelcy Rodriguez-like figure in Iran, which the president is looking for, would cause that. But go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry. I don't mean to
I know, but again, no, not at all. No, you're doing great, Anthony. But Mark, look, this ain't Venezuela. Okay, Venezuela's got problems, but they are not bloodthirsty religious zealots that we're dealing with in Iran and a lot of other places in the region. Why should the American people trust that something can happen here that they've never seen happen before, which is the bloodthirsty zealots make a reasonable deal and hold to it and don't do horrible things because now that's the mode that they're in? Why should the American people believe that?
because hope springs eternal. There are things on the table, and I did not expect Chris Cuomo to be harsher toward this operation than Scaramucci here on the segment. It is great to hear Anthony, who's decidedly not a Trump fan, holding out the possibility for progress and seeming to actually root for it. Stabler markets in the long term are just a good idea for the American economy and for the world economy. And you're absolutely right in saying, wow, it is hard to imagine how you find a Delcy Rodriguez walking the streets. I don't think there are a lot of Jeffersonian Democrats walking the streets of Tehran. But it's possible to turn, if we don't turn Iran into Indiana, maybe we can turn it into an Islamic republic that doesn't want to kill us, along the lines of the UAE, Dubai, Kuwait, et cetera, et cetera. And that is something that I believe is doable. The one thing President Trump has done is he has introduced into the Overton window, a great philosophical concept, things that we didn't think possible before. And that's why a lot of people are freaking out in several languages. Chris, I just heard you a moment ago say, I think with a straight face, that we introduced hostility into this. After 47 years, we introduced hostility. We're trying to end the hostility. And the end of those hostilities will make a better world, a better Middle East, a safer Middle East, and a more stable oil market.
Yeah. Let me ask you something, because there are a couple of little, maybe I'm just tired because I'm standing in a place that gets bombed on a regular basis, and you're suggesting that somehow I want America to lose. I hope you don't mean that.
Not at all.
And I'm going to give you a chance to correct.
Didn't say it.
Because the last time I checked, Mark, well, I picked it up, so I want to make sure I was wrong, which happens on a regular basis. Let's hope this is another one. Because last time I checked, it was you people, all right, who supported President Trump for a big reason, that he would never do the mistakes of the past and screw with crazy zealots who like to do nothing but fight. I kind of remember that. So I don't know how it's anti-American of me, the guy standing in the war zone, because he wants to make sure that the American people understand the stakes of 140 injured, 8 who might die, and how many more are to come, and for how long, based on a notion that you can just end this whenever you want. So help me understand, Mark, how am I the cynic? How am I rooting against America being in a better place by going to the war zone to help people understand what is at stake for America? Help me understand that.
I can help by sorting out the things I've said from the things I have not. First, being in the war zone does not automatically make you right. I could send, Chuck Schumer to the war zone, wouldn't make him right. I respect the geography of where you are, the late hour, and absolutely the cynicism. Cynicism and skepticism and doubt are all just fine. This is wholly new territory. But if there is a lesson to be learned in the Trump doctrine, if there is a lesson to be learned in America's history of being able to every once in a while get things right, even though many things have not gone the way we wanted before, including a war on terror in the same part of the world that was filled with negatives and filled with challenges. It is too cynical and it is too skeptical to come at us with this notion that this is somehow doomed, and I don't think you want us to fail, not at all, but I think you think it's more likely than I do. I'm willing to believe in these troops, believe in the commander-in-chief, believe in Rubio, believe in the opportunity for us to be a force for some level of good, some level of stability that will be decidedly better than what we've endured for the last 47 years, and I believe those efforts are worthwhile.
I agree with all of that, except for one thing. There seems to be, Anthony, to me, a borderline obnoxious idea that if I don't agree with the way the president's doing it, I don't share the goal.
Well,
So
I mean, look,
if I don't think that the way we're doing this can lead to lower oil prices, like you two, that I'm some kind of cynic who wants the regime to win. I don't understand that. The American people were sold Fix America First, and they're under more pressure now because of this than before. What am I getting wrong?
Okay, so let me just step in for a second. Let me just stipulate that I don't agree with it. I would have not have voted for it if I had a vote in it. And I think it was not a great idea to not even try to sell it to the American people. Going outside the process like that, it polls very poorly. And you could get caught in a quagmire here. I predict that we won't, but you could get caught in a quagmire here. So the president is going to have to answer for that come November. He promised no more forever wars, and he's lashing out at a lot of people, including Greenland. So he's going to have to reckon with that, with his base. And the other side, which hasn't done a good job, frankly, best thing Trump has going for him are the Democrats. They'll have to advocate why they're a better choice than him. Because I got to tell you, Chris, in 2024, they were not able to advocate that. So we're here now. I'm wishing the president well, and I'm wishing our troops well, because I'm, like the two of you, a patriotic American. But I also know that we've had 25 years of regime change. And Chris Cuomo, we went from Khamenei to Khamenei in less than a Scaramucci. Okay, and so we're getting Khamenei as regime change. And it's not clear to me that that's going to be the winning solution for us.
Yeah, look, all I'm saying is, I think the real war that the Americans want is a war of ideas about how we get better pay, how we can deal with the affordability crisis, how we deal with an immigration policy that works to make us stronger and not weaker. And that's what they thought they were signing up for, not this. And that doesn't mean that I don't want it to work out. I know what the regime means. I've spent the last 25 years bouncing around this world, understanding what the regime means. I would love to see them destroyed. If I were a younger, braver person, I'd probably volunteer for that. But I'm not. So I'm doing what I can to help people understand it so it doesn't get worse. Mark Davis, I always appreciate your perspective. Thank you for offering it to me. Anthony Scaramucci, the same as always. Thank you for being my friends, fellas. Take care of yourselves. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.